It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Mikey Weinstein. Mikey Weinstein is the undisputed leader of the national movement to restore the obliterated wall separating church and state in the most technologically lethal organization ever created by humankind, the United States Armed Forces. Described by Harper's Magazine as the constitutional conscience of the U.S. military, a man determined to force accountability, Mikey's family has a long and distinguished U.S. military history spanning 3 consecutive generations of military academy graduates for over 130 years of combined service, active duty military in every major combat engagement our country has been in from World War I to the current global war on terror. Mikey is a 1997 undergraduate of the United States Air Force Academy. Mikey has been married for over 35 years to his wife Bonnie. He is a proud parent of 2 sons and 1 daughter. His oldest son and daughter-in-law are 2004 graduates, and Mikey's youngest son graduated in the class of 2007 from the Air Force Academy and is the 6th of Mikey's family to attend the academy. His father is a distinguished graduate of the United States Naval Academy. Mikey has spent 10 years in the Air Force as a JAG, or military attorney, serving as both federal prosecutor and criminal defense attorney. A registered Republican, he also spent over 3 years in the West Wing of the Reagan administration as legal counsel to the White House. In his final position there, Mikey was named the committee management officer of the much-publicized Iran-Contra investigation, and in his capacity as Assistant General Counsel of the White House Office of Administration, Executive Office of the President of the United States. Mikey has held numerous positions in corporate America as a senior executive, businessman, and attorney. After stints at prominent law firms in both New York City and Washington, D.C., Mikey served as the first general counsel to Texas billionaire and 2-time presidential candidate H. Ross Perot and Perot Systems. He left Mr. Perot's employ in 2006 to focus his full-time attention on the nonprofit charitable foundation he founded to directly battle the far-right militant radical evangelical religious fundamentalists, the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. Mikey has appeared innumerable times on all of our major cable and terrestrial TV news networks and is a frequent guest on national radio networks as well. His constitutional activism has been covered and profiled extensively in the print media, including the Associated Press, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the LA Times, the Denver Post, the Guardian, and many other national and international newspapers and periodicals, including Time Magazine, Rolling Stone, and others. Mikey was named one of the 50 most influential Jews in America by The Forward, one of the nation's preeminent Jewish publications. He also has received a nomination for the JFK's Profile and Courage Award and received the BuzzFlash Wings of Justice Award. In addition, Mikey was honored by a distinguished civil rights organization, Jews for Racial and Economic Justice, with the Rabbi Marshall T. Meyer Risk Taker Award for those who have taken extraordinary risks in the pursuit of justice. Reviled by the militant, radical, evangelical, fundamentalist Christian far right, Mikey has been given many names by his enemies, including Satan, Satan's lawyer, the Antichrist, the godless, secular leftist, the antagonizer of all Christians, the most dangerous man in America, and most recently and perhaps most colorfully, the field general of the godless armies of Satan. On October 11, 2011, for the 3rd consecutive year, the Military Religious Freedom Foundation was officially nominated again for the 2012 Nobel Peace Prize, its 4th total nomination. Please give a round of applause.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. I know it's a cold night. I know the Lobos are playing San Diego State. It's a somewhat meaningful game, so we won't make this be very long, and so I appreciate everybody for coming out who's here. For those of you that, I know we have some friends and family out there, and others that probably have no clue who I am or what we're doing, but just heard about this in the paper or whatever. I'll try to make it really short, and what it is that we're talking about is something that's horrific. We're talking about a war that's going on that very few people will know about. In the last 5 days, we've broken 2 news stories that have gone viral, all around the world. As of 2 o'clock this afternoon, one of the stories had 14,800,000 individual news hits, which is enormous. The other one is climbing up to over 10 million. The book, the first thing I want to try to discuss is that our foundation is called the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. We represent just under 27,000 active duty United States sailors, soldiers, Marines, and airmen. cadets and midshipmen, veterans, Coast Guard, National Guard, and reservists. 96% of our clients are practicing Protestants and Roman Catholics, being told that they're not Christian enough. Tonight we're kicking off the National Book Tour here in the hometown, but we're going to be heading out very shortly all around America to push the book. And why I started the foundation, and why our family started the foundation, what we do, how we do it, and why we do it is all explained in the book. The book is provocative. If you look at it, there's like a three-dimensional viewing of the blood all over it, which I think kind of shocked my wife when she first saw it. But it's meant to be a shocking revelation, no pun intended. We are really dealing basically with a situation where what we call the fundamentalist Christian Taliban inside the U.S. military, which is, in the intro mentioned, is the technologically most lethal organization that we've ever created. It's extremely controversial. A lot of people don't like me. They don't like my family. They don't like what we're doing. My response, I know there's children here, is, well, I can't say what I would really say. I'm not running for office. I'm not, somebody running for the U.S. Senate. That's never going to happen, or the House of Representatives. I don't care if they like us or not. If you remember Frederick Douglass, the great abolitionist, right? One of his greatest statements was, "Power concedes nothing without a demand." So our foundation, we're the demanders of the commanders. I don't care if they don't like us. Some of you out there, there's probably statistically some out there that would like me to not be on this earth, and that's fine. But I don't care about that. All I care about is carrying the message and being the voice for our members of the U.S. military who can't speak out, because to speak out turns them into what we refer to as tarantulas on wedding cakes. My daughter's here tonight. She's getting married May 27th, and I can assure you that a tarantula on her wedding cake will not last very long. And no tarantulas on wedding cakes last very long. It's very hard to bite the hand that feeds you. But if you're going to get involved in civil rights, you not only have to be prepared to bite the hand that feeds you, piss off classmates from your college. By the way, I graduated in 1977, not 1997. So I got to check to see where they got that. But I know I'm very youthful looking. You've got to be prepared to, like, anybody see that movie, 27 Hours? Where the guy cuts off his own arm. That's what you have to be prepared to do to fight this. 127 hours, that's right. The book will take you through this. On the back of the book are 4 fairly prominent people that give you their perspective of why you should read the book. When you turn the cover open, you'll see 6 other very prominent people. So you've got 10 people that blurb the book and explain that this is what it is that we're doing, why we're doing it, and how hard it is to do it. My wife will be coming shortly, but she's not here yet. And Bonnie was asked by a journalist not too long ago, what do you have to give up to do this? And her response was very moving, in that you have to give up everything. Everything. Your personal security, your financial security, your friendships. Are we heroes? No, the heroes are the members of the military that are out there, fighting around the clock so we can sit here and talk about this. But it's a little known. I shouldn't say it's little known. I guess we've gotten it to the point that it's become far more prominent. Last Friday, the Washington Post has offered me a twice monthly column, which is going to be great. I can assure you that my venom is going to be spewed out through that channel as much as it can be. But the people that aren't here tonight, because we can't fit 27,000 people into this store. We do have some people here tonight that I know are clients and certainly supporters. These are members of the military that, again, are basically being told that they lack intelligence, character, honor, honorability, courage, integrity because of their chosen religious faith or lack thereof. And there is no difference between that and telling someone that they're stupid because of their skin color or because they're a female. It's exactly the same thing. A lot of people try to argue, well, that Mikey Weinstein, you catch the last name Weinstein, he's probably not Irish. And he's a lawyer. So let's see, let's marry a Jewish lawyer. Oh, that's a bad combination. Bad combination. If my last name was Smith or Jones or Cowan, we wouldn't face 99% of the hell we're going with or have to have armed guards with us tonight wherever we go. Live with attack-trained dogs, have bodyguards and everything else. This is all very, very vividly explained in the book. It's the guy that is my co-writer, which means, he did most of the work in putting this together, is the same guy that was chosen by Snoop Dogg to do his book, David Iglesias, the fired U.S. attorney, who's a dear friend and evangelical Christian, I might add. Al Green, the great jazz musician, multiple Grammy Award winner. Sergeant, I forget the guy's name, the guy that captured Saddam Hussein. Devin C. is my co-writer and co-author, and he's the one who's done all of those things. So the book, the best way to try to help us, your name won't be out there, is to buy the book or buy several copies of the book. I don't know how many page one has here. I think they had somewhere like 70 or 75. It would be great to sell out tonight and send a message to the rest of America, the way Amazon did. Amazon sold out in the first day, and their second shipment is coming in. I know it's $18.95, but if you want to help us and believe in what we're doing, and even if you hate me and want me dead, read about it because it's great opposition research. It really is all about, someone once said that in America we have only the mere illusion of democracy. What we really have is an auction. And one of our biggest funders is the Rockefeller Family Fund. They're pretty American. Again, when you take a look at the people who supported the book, ambassadors, generals, we all love MASH, right? Dr. B.J. Honeycutt, Mike Farrell, very dear friend on our advisory board, Ed Asner. I know they're viewed as liberals, but then so did also blurbing the book is Lieutenant General Jack Rives, who from 2006 to 2010 was the top lawyer, 3-star general for the JAG Corps, all the lawyers in the Air Force. He didn't just retire and go play golf. Now he's the head of a tiny organization called the American Bar Association. And Dick Schlossberg, who's a conservative guy, the former CEO and publisher of both the Los Angeles Times and the Denver Post. Gene Nickel, conservative guy, the dean of the law school at CU Boulder and UNC Chapel Hill, the president emeritus from America's either its oldest or second oldest college. We'll have to check with Harvard. That's William and Mary. So what are they seeing in this? Why do we do what we do? It's not easy to be in our family. It's not easy to be me. It's not easy to be our next door neighbors, and they're here tonight. We've had the windows shot out of our house, animals slaughtered and put on the front porch of the house, swastikas and crucifixes marked on the house, tires slashed, beer bottles and feces thrown at the house, and those are on good days, and that's just here in Albuquerque. The book should be a pretty wild ride. It's written to be a wild ride. There's some nice pictures in there, I'm trying to create a sense of mystery so that you will buy it or buy several and give it to people so they can understand what's going on. What I thought I would do now is probably open it up for a little bit of Q&A, and then we'll go and we'll start signing books. The last thing I'll say is this: we often get attacked for not being patriotic, because we're involved in wars and what are you doing? And I remember I was asked this question by Dan Rather. I did an interview with him a couple of years ago. It was a 3.5-hour interview, which they boiled down to like 28 minutes, and it's on our website. And Dan was a great guy, but I knew he had a zinger question coming. And at the end, he sat there and said the same thing. You get criticized, Mikey, for being unpatriotic, and how do you respond? Most of the time, we come up with these great answers, these pithy great answers, 2 or 3 days later. Particularly if my wife says something to me, I think on a Monday, I think it's the perfect thing to shoot back at her on Thursday, but it's already too late. But this time I was ready, and it was provided by the great historian Howard Zinn, who died just a couple of years ago, which is that dissent is the highest form of patriotism. And as I said before, when you've got people like we do, most of our clients are young enlisted folks, 18, 22, 23, young officers, 22, 24, 26. We have them at all ranks from 4 stars all the way down. And it matters because, we're here on a Wednesday night because our freedoms are being protected by young men and women around the world. They're our guardians of all the liberties that we have guaranteed in the U.S. Constitution. They're not civil privileges. You get them even if you're an asshole. They're civil rights. And everything sounds better in Latin, right? There's a great phrase, quis custodiet ipsos custodes. Who will guard the guards? And apparently only the Military Religious Freedom Foundation will do it. This is our second book. 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago, we started off the National Book Tour. I was with St. Martin's Press, the largest publisher in New York, right here. And now we're with a smaller publisher that is far more passionate about what we're doing. And this is kind of the second version, and it starts out with a kind of a heart-pumping situation of the attack that occurred at our house in, I believe it was June of 2008, when my daughter and I were at home. And you'll learn about sons and daughters that are being lured away by cults that you could not believe would exist at any school, let alone the Air Force Academy. You'll learn about, 10%, a little bit over 10% of every Muslim American in the U.S. military is our client. You'll learn about the unbelievable prejudice against Muslim Americans. You'll see a Protestant fighter pilot and cargo pilot lose his wings because he refused to bow his head at the mandatory Jesus prayer. You'll learn about the story we broke in August when the Air Force, we caught them. It took 72 hours before they pulled the training. But for the last 20 years, they admitted, it was really 25 years, they've been training our U.S. Air Force nuclear missile launch officers at Vandenberg Air Force Base about how to launch the missiles, and interspersing the book of Revelation, specifically Revelation 19:11, the book of Matthew, the book of Timothy, using as an endorser of this a former SS major by the name of Werner von Braun, maybe not the greatest moral compass person in the world. You'll learn about the fact that every one of our military's rifles has embedded into its metal casings on their gun sights direct quotations from the books of Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Revelation. We broke all of these stories, and we continue to break them one after another. Last Thursday, we broke the story that the Marine Scout Sniper units were using a flag with the Nazi SS emblem on it, right underneath the American flag. It took 24 hours before General John Amos, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, and Secretary of Defense Panetta finally apologized. 3 working days later, we broke the story about the fact that we have a new combat base in Afghanistan called Forward Operating Base Aryan. For those of you who don't know, that's the term that Hitler used for the master race. DOD came back immediately saying, no, it was misspelled. It was supposed to be Aryan, A-R-I-A-N, or A-R-I-A-N-A, Ariana. Of course, we had the contracts because one of our clients, so suffice to say, we have the actual contract supporting the base where it clearly says Aryan. I can go on and on, but I'm going to open up for any questions. I see that Marty Chavez, someone who some of you may know, who's running for, I think, some office here, just joined us, and Marty, thank you for being here. And everybody else. Any questions, anybody, before we start the actual begging for you to buy multiple books and then sign stuff? We do. We have Kindle. We're also Nook, Barnes & Noble, and yeah, we've been up on Kindle for, I think, 3 weeks now, pretty much. Yes, ma'am.
I lived in Colorado Springs where there were 5 military installations and also a large grouping of Christian extremists. Why do you think that the mutual attraction is so strong?
You know, I refer to Colorado Springs as the Protestant Vatican, and my first book is actually called With God on Our Side. You can probably buy it here too. One man's war against an evangelical coup in America's military. And I made a mistake. The evangelicals are our friends. We have them on our advisory board. They donate to us. They're our clients. I found out that in fighting, you know, the Fox News and other maniacs organizations try to argue that we're fighting Christianity. We're not. I mean, most of our clients, most of our board, most of our staff, we're all over the country, are Protestants and Roman Catholics. I mentioned 96%, and by this weekend we'll bust through 27,000 clients. Look, here's a quick 60-second course in Christendom, right? Think of it as a circle with the Rio Grande going down the middle. To the left or to your right is mainline Roman Catholicism and Protestantism, which basically follows what's in the book of Matthew. The Sermon on the Mount, when Jesus says, love the Lord your God with all your mind, soul, and heart. And basically, very Rodney King-esque, the golden rule, treat others the way you want to be treated. It's the great commandment, which most mainline progressive Christian sects follow, Eastern Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant. Cross the Rio Grande to the other side, and we're in the world of evangelicals and fundamentalists. They subordinate the great commandment to something called the Great Commission. Mark 16:15, Matthew 28:19, one of the last things Jesus is supposed to have said to his disciples, go and make disciples of all nations. So they want to make everybody in this room just like them, which is fine. In America, you can do that. The problem is that I didn't realize that there was a second river. And that divides the territory of fundamentalists and evangelicals right down the middle, where the evangelicals are saying, yes, I want to make Mikey, and I want to make everybody, Obama, Marty Chavez, everybody, a Christian just like me. But I got to comport my zeal to do that in accordance with the time, the place, and the manner restrictions put forth by the U.S. Constitution. And sorry, it's construing federal and state case law. We have judges that decide what's there. The fundamentalist response is, and I know there are some kids here, they flip the bird to that saying, no, I cannot be constrained by time, place, or manner. I will scream Jesus in a crowded theater. There is nothing that this government can do to stop me from turning you into a Christian. Those are the fundamentalists, and they're exactly like the Taliban. the Wahhabist fundamentalist Islamic maniacs that we're fighting. Those are the only entities that we fight. They are illegal under the law in America. You do not have the right to scream Jesus in a crowded theater. If you work at page 1 and your shift supervisor is pushing Jesus on you, that violates Title 7 of the U.S. Code. You cannot do that. If you work at Taco Bell, you cannot do that. But it's a million times worse in the U.S. military. We have some active duty officers here tonight and other personnel that are here. Because in the U.S. military, it's a totally different situation. If you have sexual intercourse, got your attention now, with someone other than your spouse in the military, that's adultery. That's a felony in the U.S. military. If you're told to go do anything, go to the dentist at 4 p.m. by your superior and you don't do it, felony. I spent 10 years as a JAG in the Air Force. First assignment was Holloman Air Force Base. It's a different deal. Why? Because it completely erodes good order and discipline to have these things happen. So it's very difficult when you're even being gently evangelized on the job by your military superior to say, get the hell out of my face, sir or ma'am. They can't do that. They come to us, we do it very effectively. Just like Superman has 2 weaknesses, magic and kryptonite of various colors. The Pentagon, or as we call it, the Pentecostal gon, has 2 weaknesses. Being embarrassed in the media, which we do very well, and being dragged into federal and state court. We've never actually won a case, but we go so frequently that it's just the hell of having to say, oh, here we go again. We have one of the world's largest law firms that works for us, and we have 7 or 8 other law firms out there that do all this. Yes, sir.
Mikey, I've been reading your About Your Victories probably for 5 years now, and do you get any sense that the top military brass have learned anything from all of your victories and their defeats?
They've learned to hate me and our family and our foundation that much more. I got a call last night during one of my favorite TV shows, Southland, great show about a cop show, from one of the members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. There's I won't say which one. And I told him that I told a fib, I said I was at a movie. Well, in a way, a TV show is like a movie. And he'll call back. You know, from our perspective, I think they've learned to fear us more. With regard to your question regarding Colorado Springs, I don't know why that Colorado Springs is like a moth to a flame. A lot of the fundamentalist organizations were aligned there, but it's no better at West Point or Annapolis. We have 11 clients, 11 midshipmen and staff at the Naval Academy. My dad's here tonight. He's a 53 graduate of the Naval Academy. We had 19 at West Point till 3 weeks ago. And that has now jumped to 122 because West Point invited General Boykin, the Black Hawk Down general, to come speak, who's a great guy. He just wants every Muslim in the world to not exist. And as he goes around hawking his book, he tells people that I'm demonic and satanic. So we didn't think he was a great person to come speak at the National Prayer Breakfast at West Point. We joined an effort to help stop that. I took a call 3 Thursday nights ago from 27 conference call in the evening, 27 faculty members at West Point asking for help, and 75 cadets saying, would you please help us, because if they stand up and say something, they are ruined. And in the military, those of you that are in now or have been in, understand that you can create a performance evaluation for someone in the military that looks sterling, like they walk on water, but by slightly twisting a syllable to the people in the military, you are done. Stick in a fork. Next question. Yes, sir.
Is Colin Powell an ally or an enemy?
You know, we've had several people ask me this. I think he's very much an ally, but I had a clergyman today that's very close to my family, in answering your question, say, Mikey, bought the book, it's great, you know that we totally have your back. And I was kind of quiet on the phone because, of course, we're like 500 yards behind you, but we do have your back. So my response is, we're not born with a Hollywood soundtrack. The chorus, the wonderful chorus of people, the drums beating, the trombones playing when something happens, like in a horror movie or in even the movie Rudy, or whenever you see something that's really important, that music, you have to kind of detect that yourself and decide, is this one of those moments? And when I lived here in Albuquerque, I was in 2nd grade one day and I watched a 3rd grader get the hell kicked out of him by some 4th graders, and nobody was doing anything. I was a 2nd grader, I didn't do anything either. And I told myself I would never let that happen again. Nothing happened, and then the next year, my 3rd grade teacher, we had something happen in America in March of 1964. Kitty Genovese, a young lady, was raped and murdered in New York City. For 45 minutes, raped and murdered, and no one did anything. And that, in fact, I got goosebumps right now. it made me feel so guilty that happened, because I remember that third grader getting the hell kicked out of him, and no one did anything. The average person, it's easy to look the other way and not do something. And I started to read the book. I started out because I was a pissed off parent. We have some very good family friends here. When I found out that my kids were being called effing Jews and being accused of total complicity in the execution of Jesus Christ at your Air Force Academy, where it costs $400,000 a year. My accountant's here. I should send him up there to check all that. $400,000 a year to put a cadet through the academy. And my kids were being called this. Now, I'm not going to sit back. I've told people, with regard to the arc of my life, I started out at point A in my life, which is wherever I saw anti-Semitism, I didn't effing care if I lived or died. Someone's going to get an effing beating, and I'm going to effing do it. Now it's 8 years later, because we started this when, thank you Mel Gibson, wherever you are, when his movie came out, which I refer to as the Jesus Chainsaw Massacre or Freddy versus Jesus, this month, 8 years ago, right? The Passion of the Christ, that's what started at the Academy for me. Now I'm over here at point B, which is wherever I see unconstitutional religious persecution of any stripe, I don't effing care if I live or die. I don't. Now we have our guards with us tonight. I would like to try to live, but for all those that hate me, I'm very heavily insured, so all you're going to do is just give a huge financial largesse to the foundation if you try to take me out. This is something where you have to decide what you're going to do. What do you care about? What is it that you all personally care about? Everybody has things going on. My daughter wants to get married. Everybody they want to go on a vacation. They want to go camping. They want to see the Lobos game tonight. I understand all that. I always felt, I don't know if there's a God or not, but I know that you can boil down these commandments, I think, to two. Love each other and help each other. And I've got people here with me tonight that I called up and said, would you come and would you help support us? And they're here. And I know they're busy. Somebody's running for Congress. Everyone's got their families. We had a foot of snow dumped on us this morning. And our next door neighbor and I, we were trying to get our cars out. So I realize all that. There's a great basketball game on tonight. But what do you do when you've got a 19-year-old female Islamic Marine, whose name I won't tell you, who I've been worried about for the last 7 months is going to kill herself because her gunnery sergeant, who is her superior, has made it clear to her that the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim. So much so, she's under such incredible duress that she fantasizes about killing herself and leaving her corpse on her gunny's desk with a sign saying, "Now, gunny, am I finally a good Muslim?" So what do you do when you're told that your worth as a human being, your marginalization, you're being denigrated, dehumanized, that you are not as good as somebody else? In fact, you're far less than that. And it's not based on skin color this time. It's not based on gender per se, except the people that we fight, fundamentalist Christians, have several stenches about them. They are virulently homophobic, virulently misogynistic. They don't like women too much, except to do one thing. Like the Cadets for Christ Club at the Air Force Academy. Their view is that women need to have a shepherd. They're mostly valuable for the eggs in their ovaries so they can shoot out Christian warriors. And every female needs to have a shepherd to tell her everything to do. Pat Robertson, back in the 70s said, hey, this group is way too out there for me. This is like Hitler telling a group of fascists, you're too much, you're thugs, get away from me. I'm Hitler, I can't deal with you. And yet and this is detailed in the Air Force, in the book about Cadets for Christ. We have numerous families that have come to us because their daughters have been taken away at the Air Force Academy.
I even want to on your lap.
There are many more stories in there, not the least of which, I'm not sure if we put it in this book, but I have to remember, is the case of David Winters, whose father is a prominent architect in the Washington, D.C. area. Very proud of his son, Jewish family, went down to a place called Paris Island, Camp Lejeune, to go through basic Marine training about 5.5 years ago. He faced such virulent anti-Semitism there from fundamentalist Christian DIs, forcing him to change his faith, that during the course of basic training, and from so many eyewitnesses of his fellow Marines, he would be doing push-ups, they would kick him in the back of the head, forcing his face down, splitting like a ripe tomato, blood everywhere. He finally accepted Christ right before he graduated. He came home to his family, and his father was wearing a USMC sweater, so proud about it, very conflicted. If any of you have seen the movie Full Metal Jacket, the first part of that movie, David went for a walk with his father to try to tell him what had happened. They never came, but he murdered his father, stabbed him to death 67 times. David is now in a hospital, in a prison in Washington, D.C. At trial, his lawyers never raised this issue, so we're trying to get him a new trial and get him into a hospital for the criminally insane. But this is not the first time. We've had other cases of minority religion soldiers and Marines beaten senseless, and it goes on and on. So it's a serious business. Yes, I like sports, and I like to go to movies and do all these things. But someone has to do something. Somebody has to care. As I mentioned before, when my wife said that, okay, what is the cost? Well, this talks about it. It talks about what the cost is. I don't like the fact that we don't have, a lot of money anymore. I don't like the fact that we have to drive home in different ways, and we constantly have to think about protecting our lives. We sit a certain way in a restaurant. We drive home through, and we're constantly looking over our shoulders. We have to have armed guards with us. I don't like that, but it's not about us. It's about the cause. We're not farmers. We are a cause. You can help us by buying out and selling this book out tonight. How many? I think they got 69 or 68 left. My mommy bought 6 the other night. And so I'm subtracting that from the 79, I think they had.
I don't like the
75. But you get it, you read it, it's a quick read, and you'll understand what we're going through. We're asking you to help us. You don't have to be, as I said in the introduction. Let me read the introduction. Because it took me a while to write this. And it's short. And this will be the reading, and then I'll take a couple more questions and we'll do some signing. And thank you for your attention. This book is dedicated to those exceptional and heroic human beings, those brilliant lions of virtue and moral and ethical strength who abjectly refuse to be snowflakes in an avalanche, which is the name of the book from the Voltaire quote. Again, no snowflake in an avalanche ever feels responsible. Thus possessing the uncommon courage to speak truth to power. Chiefly among them are my wonderful wife Bonnie and my beautiful children Casey, Amanda, Curtis, and Amber. Ah, but there are more lions still. This book is likewise dedicated to all Military Religious Freedom Foundation staff, advisory board, and board members, supporters, donors, and especially our thousands of soldier, sailor, Marine, airman, cadet, midshipmen, and armed forces veterans, clients around the world. They show us that we all can and must stand up and fight boldly against the unconstitutional wretchedness of bigotry and prejudice and religious predators. Indeed, one day, just one day, ladies and gentlemen, as a lion, is all that may ever be needed to summon the fortitude to fight back against this brutal intolerance. But one never knows when that one day will be. So you guys have given us a day or an evening. You're here tonight. And as I said before, you can't hear the orchestra, you can't hear the drums. When you see the movies, you forget that that isn't actually going along with Russell Crowe in Gladiator. It's not really there with Rudy when he sacks the quarterback. But you've got to provide it yourself, and it's got to come from here.
Mikey, this gentleman wants to talk. Right here.
Okay, Mommy. Another question? Okay, you've had two. I got to get somebody else a chance. Go ahead.
How are veterans impacted by the fundamentals?
Unbelievably so. We have our entire director of Veterans Affairs is a naval enlisted gent who was proselytized in the VA hospitals when he was under a heart monitor machine. He made it very clear he happened to be Jewish. He did not want to be proselytized, and yet and he was that's how he came to us. So we constantly have veterans. We have all kinds of issues with the VA. We work with a number of veterans organizations to try to help them and protect them. This exists with the sanitation workers, with public school teachers, with cops, with fire folks, but at least they don't have conventional laser-guided nuclear weapons. When you inextricably intertwine the concept of the book of Revelation with our weaponry, you realize the people we're fighting want to blow the world up because it'll act as an accelerant and lubricant to help Jesus in the darkness find his way back here. They're promised a 200-mile-long river. I'm not kidding you. A 200-mile-long river, 4.5 feet deep, filled with nothing but the blood of those that their version of weaponized Jesus is slaughtered in the Battle of Armageddon. So this is what, and by the way, I don't care what their religious views are. I do care when they engage the machinery of the state, the awesome financial power and prestige of this country to gain an advantage over every other faith. Yes, sir.
You mentioned early on about the illusion of democracy in this country. I often believe we have an illusion of a constitution, in particular the two issues that you deal with, the First Amendment separation and the Article 6 religious test. As an attorney, do you have some sense in historical perspective of the case law regarding First Amendment prohibitions and case law regarding the religious test prohibitions? Because right now, as I see it, this is the biggest impact on the military, and we sure see this playing out in our election process, particularly in these presidential primaries going on right now.
Yes, that's a good question. There are two parts of the Constitution that we deal with. The separation of church and state in the First Amendment, which of course the people we're fighting view as a myth like Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. Because the Constitution doesn't say there will be a separation between church and state. It also doesn't say that you have the right to a fair trial. You have the right in the Constitution to a public and speedy trial. But it took something we call case law to determine that it has to be a fair trial. You know your Miranda rights that you get if you're arrested? They're not in the Constitution. That came from a Supreme Court case called... Yes. I can give you 3 or 4 more million examples of this. And as the gentleman in the back mentioned, it's not just the First Amendment, it's also Clause 3, Article 6. Most lawyers are unaware of that. Our constitutional framers were so assiduously careful to separate church and state, metaphysical, physical, temporal, and spiritual in this country because they looked at the horrors of Europe, Cromwell in England, and of course the Salem witch trials, that they also put in Clause 3, Article 6 in the body of the Constitution, which says we will never have a religious test for any position in the federal government, ever. And then we get to Tuesday, July 12th, 2005, when the number 2 ranking chaplain, a 1-star general in the Air Force, now the commander, the head chaplain, a 2-star, told the New York Times, the most hated newspaper for the Pentagon, so you know this had to be fully vetted, that we in the Air Force reserve the right to evangelize anyone listen carefully, we determine to be unchurched. What? Well, they're going to hold a Geiger counter up, and if it comes back and says you're this thing called unchurched, why the U.S. Air Force, your Air Force, reserves the right not to Islamicize, Judaize, Catholicize, Protestantize, Wiccanize, Native American spiritualize you, but to evangelize you? Really? Well, who's going to stand up and fight? Who's going to say no to that? We did. We sued them within a week. I know they hate me. My wife and I get phone calls as if this is going to upset me at the house saying, how does it feel to be the most despised graduate of your college, of your academy? You know, they usually hang up before I can say, it feels pretty good. Next question. Yes, sir.
I remember in the 1950s, General Edwin Walker was fired from the Army for proselytizing in Germany. But we've not heard much about this issue in the last 50 years until you really raised it. Has this intense level of proselytizing been going on in the military since World War II or before?
You know, I know we have a lot of veterans here. How many veterans do we have here? Can we have a hand for all of our veterans, please? That is a very, very good question. This has been cyclical, but I can tell you that this latest version began in 1972 with the end of the draft. Because at least when we had a draft, you could argue we were pulling people in with some degree of formidable magnitude and equanimity from what we now refer to as blue and red states equally. You're drafted, you're going to go. Draft ended in 72, although we still have a poverty draft, right? And then we came up with this concept of the all-volunteer force. So we saw a gigantic morphing from those that we would be forced to come in from what we might refer to as more liberal and progressive geographical areas, morphing into the areas that are far more conservative. And nature abhors a vacuum. One of my classmates is here tonight from the Air Force Academy. We didn't see this, Rich. We didn't see this when we were there. It was there. It was beginning. We entered in 73 and graduated in 77. And I look back now, and I look back, you know, with hindsight, I can see these things happening. But it began to grow and grow and grow. The first time it really reared its head was in 1994, 22 years later, with the so-called Gingrich Revolution, the real politics of polarization. Remember, you know, Clinton was at the end of his, you know, his president, 2 years under his presidency, and the so-called Gingrich Revolution. I mean, if you're an American, it was ones and zeros. If you believe in this, you get to be an American, and if you're not, don't believe in this, we really have a great deal of, you know, we have to suspect everything there is to suspect about you. You need to be watched very carefully. And it continued to move on in 1994, and then it went berserk after 9/11. The whole concept, the people that we're fighting believe that if I do this, if there's a reason I did that, and you can look into the book of Revelation, or you can look into its antecedents, into the Pentateuch, or the 5 books of Moses, or the Torah, and it's all explained there, the playbook, which is fine. I don't freaking care. But keep your hands off of our tanks and all of our other weapons, and stop telling me that we're fighting the Muslims, them Muslims, because Jesus wants us to. Christianity, your personal Christian rights in this country will never trump the civil rights of your fellow brothers and sisters. Get over it. Another question? I'm sorry, I'm gonna try to calm down. Yes, sir.
What about the chaplains? Are they, I mean, you've got all the religious chaplains.
84% of the chaplaincy are evangelical right now. That doesn't mean that they're bad, remember, because we have some of our biggest supporters are evangelicals. And even though they think I'm gonna burn eternally in hell along with Gandhi, Little Anne Frank, the 1.5 million Jewish children under the age of 13 that were slaughtered in the Holocaust, Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, and probably Whitney Houston, that's fine, that's their view, that doesn't bother me, because they will not violate the law when they proselytize. But a good hunk of the chaplaincy are absolute fundamentalists, raging fundamentalists. And the good news is that they're just staff officers, like doctors and lawyers. It's when you get the commanders, like General Boykin, or others, or General Walker back then. We have our list, our theses list, so we know who these people are, and we know who the ones are that are not like that, but will not stand up or fight. Some of them are extremely senior. 27,000 is a lot. It's a lot of people to come to us saying, please help me. And we tell them they don't have a problem issue or challenge. They're basically victims of spiritual molestation or spiritual rape. It hurts. It hurts to have this affect your life. It hurts to be told that you're not as good as somebody else. It hurts to be told that you're stupid and that you need to get right with Jesus, particularly if you've been a Christian most of your life, like most of our clients have been. Methodists, Baptists, we have 21 different varieties of Baptists in our foundation alone. LDS, before you even start moving, Episcopalian, Lutheran, makes no difference. And it's hard not to live this 24/7. My kids, particularly my daughter who's still at home for a few more months before she, her fiance just graduated from pilot, just did his last check ride in pilot training, will soon graduate today, and the end of middle of March. My wife and kids are constantly saying, you gotta get a life and do something else. And so I take mini vacations, like going to the bathroom. That's like I have my BlackBerry and cell phone with me. And I try to take little vacations in the mind, 15, 20, 25-second micro vacations. And seriously speaking, it's kind of all in for something like this. And the book describes what it's like to be all in and the impact it has on the family. And next question, please. Yes, ma'am.
I was surprised to hear that you're a registered Republican. And in light of what's happening recently with the primaries, how do you reconcile that?
Are you familiar with the term rhino? Republican in name only. I was in the West Wing of the Reagan White House for over 3 years. I was one of his 6 lawyers. I managed the Iran-Contra investigation. Barry Goldwater and Jacob Javits would be turning over in their grave looking at what's happened in our military and our country today. There is grainy black and white film of both Barry Goldwater and JFK talking about how the separation of church and state is what makes this so wonderful. It's a foundational, immutable aspect of American life. And they would be turning over, and one of the last speeches that Goldwater made was how disgusted he was, saying that it seems as though that the Republicans have been hijacked by this. Now, we're a 501c3. I look at the Democrats, and I want to see you stand up and do something. Do something. Everyone knows, I've had I'm not going to give names with regard to people that are running for office right now. But I can tell you that we've had significant Democrats that have reached out saying, oh, Mikey, we love you. What a hero you are, fantastic. When the time comes to stand up, they run away. See, this kind of stuff, when you read this book, we are protecting the rights of people who run to the sound of gunfire, not away from it. And we've had to be like this. My wife, who's, by the way, that's my wife Bonnie over there. She didn't sign up for this. This is my daughter Amber and my mom and dad. Mom and dad, if you guys can stand up real quickly. It's not easy. My mom and dad are still waiting for me to get a real job, and can somebody else go do this? I wish, Bonnie and I crossed this several years ago, saying, well, look, are we going to actually devote and start selling things to keep this up and going? And I can't. What am I supposed to do? Go take a job, work, over at IBM or a shift worker at KFC? I would do it, except it's going to be hard to let something like this go. The way I describe it in answer to your question is, it's like you go to see your dermatologist who says there's a freckle on your hand, doesn't like the way it looks, come back in a week, I'm gonna take it off, and then, well, don't worry about it. A week later, the doctor calls and goes, hey, listen, bad news, good news, that thing has some cancer in it. Come in anytime in the next month, because it's slow growing, we'll take care of it. But instead, you go, no, I'm not going to. I'm gonna go on a worldwide trip, which you can do. You'll be dead in a year. This is what happened to Steve Schiff, if you remember him, our former congressman. Had a little thing on his ear. Well, how are you supposed to turn away from this? How do you not look when people are crying and hurting? It's like people say, we get all these wonderful awards. We're the only New Mexico organization ever to be nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. We have 4 nominations in the last 3 years. And that's meaningful. It's given out each October. So just a few months ago, 2011 was given out, and that was the heaviest nomination year ever for the Peace Prize. Only 54 organizations were nominated, and we were one of them. A week later, to our shock, we got nominated a 4th time for this year, 2012, this time by a prior winner of the Nobel Peace Prize. So we'll take it. But in doing this, like I said before, it's not about heroism. Are you heroic if you're sitting in your lawn chair at 1 o'clock on a Saturday in the summer drinking a Bud Light and you watch a 1-year-old walk out and crawl out into traffic in front of your house and you run out and go get that kid? What are you if you sit back and do nothing? Because you want to watch Dancing with the Stars or you want to watch the football game. What are you? And I ask the question here, I don't need to see a show of hands. How many people, probably a lot in this group, have ever, one time in your life, spent one day as a lion and actually spoken truth to power? To a teacher, a boss. I see the lady back here has done it. You know how it feels when you stand up to someone that can ruin your life. Because as one of my very, very dear friends once said in our foundation, remember, our Bill of Rights was passed not for the convenience of the majority, ladies and gentlemen, but to prevent the expected tyranny of the majority in persecuting the minority. The tyranny of the majority. Oftentimes when you stand up, as my good friend says, and you speak truth to power, and you make a demand of power, you watch a morphing occur. You see the tyranny of the majority turning into the tantrum of the majority. And that's when you have to be prepared to bite that hand that feeds you, or as my wife has said, spend less than 127 hours and tear your own hand off. It hurts. It hurts to be kicked to the curb. It hurts to be whispered about a little while. And then you realize it feels great. And my publisher had a great idea for the book. In addition to these great photos and the fact that it's a quick read, at the end of it, we publish some of the most heinous messages we get, along with some of the great ones. So it's kind of like eating a marble cake. Where part of the cake is real cake and the rest is tar. It's like mixing feces with chocolate ice cream. But you read this stuff and you see the kind of stuff that comes in here. I'll read one to you, if I can find this one. This is from the wife of a Green Beret. Bear with me. It's my book, damn it. Dear MRFF, I'm going to read it the way it was written. A lot of these people are not going to do too well on the SAT. At least the verbal part. I am proud wife of a Green Beret combat soldier who is true man of faith, a true Christian father to our children, and a true warrior for our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and USA. In our Bible study on base, we know of you, Mr. Weinstein, and pray and talk of you, Mickey. And I hate when they call me Mickey, because it's Mikey. And your evil doing with MFRR. Okay, it's MRFF. They can't even get the acronym right. We also know that Jesus speak to you to warn you to stop trying to take Christianity away from our military and our USA. USA is and always was a Christian nation meant to bring Jesus to all the world. We know and can see that Jesus does speak to you and will stand up to you and you supporters. Look at how miserable your life is now. We see you on the newspapers and TV. You will never defeat the Lord Jesus because Jesus wills it all. Your wife has multiple sclerosis, which is true. And she will die a painful death, all twisted up with pain and bent in agony because of you fighting against Jesus. Your daughter-in-law, Amber's father, my daughter-in-law is actually Amanda, Amber's my daughter here, has brave chosen Jesus over her because she has fallen out to the evil one because of you and whom you serve. Your sons and daughter, Amanda, will watch helpless as you waste away and slowly die in poverty, all alone and forgotten, and further disgrace that you have earned now due to you fighting Jesus. You will only save them if you now surrender to Lord and Savior Jesus, who's the only way in truth and life, as John 14:6. Mickey, you are so wicked evil, as is your lying MFRR, again wrong, and your family and all those you try to get to join up to fight Jesus. But Jesus still loves you all. Can't you see His love and stop trying to destroy Christians in the armed forces? If you can't do it for you, do it for your wife and children, for the USA. All right, there's a lot more like that. There's some really great ones too. I'll take a couple more questions, and I know people want to go, and we'll start the signing. Our goal tonight is to sell out the book and send a message to the publisher and everybody else. Any other questions, anybody? One more, yes, sir.
I just want to know if that letter left everyone else in this room with that warm, fuzzy Christian brotherhood and kindness that it left me with.
I can see by the look on their faces that they're all set to start tithing. Thank you all again for coming out here. The page one people, where do you want me to go to start doing this?
Right here is fantastic. We'll just have everybody.
I want to thank all of you for being here tonight.